It's the I'm Not Your Lawyer show. I'm Jason. Brought to you by the Church of Blurk. It's immutable, it's verifiable, it's the only truth that you can count on. Unless you're Ethereum. Topic of the day today. Ethereum. Hey everybody. Remember, first thing, gotta remember, I'm not your lawyer, alright? Today's gonna be kind of a fun day. We're gonna bring in and I'm gonna mess it up already. It's Paul Sztorc. Sztorc?
Yeah, no, that was it. Yeah, that was
Sztorc,
it. No,
not
yeah,
sports.
But I assure you, I am over it. People have missed the name since forever, so I'm over it by now.
There he is. He's on the Skype cam. Paul, say hey to everybody. We can see you now.
Hi to everyone.
We're going to be going back and forth and looking at some things. The first thing I wanted to do, got to make sure we get a little bit of music going, right? We can't be totally without music.
Yeah.
First thing we're going to do is I found a video. Found a video from 2015 about Vitalik talking about some of the use cases, some of the things that could be done with Ethereum that also addresses the financial component. And so I thought, what better way to understand what Ethereum is and what the concept is, but from Vitalik himself. And so why don't we start off by queuing up that video. Let's see, that's going to be that. I'm going to transfer that over. And Paul, do you have the Exotica channel pulled open so you can watch along?
I don't, but maybe you can paste it over here.
Yeah. Let's
and then
grab
I'll just bring it up on my own. Because I thought about doing that on my phone, and then I was like, it'll be weird. But I can open the Exotica, but I think it'd probably be easier. Yeah, okay.
Wow, I think we've got a little Katy Perry going right now. Wow, what has Rihanna been listening to? If you guys don't know, this is Rihanna's Pandora channel, and so whatever I do is I just turn on whatever the last thing she's been listening to, and so that's what we get. We never really know what we're going to get. It could be hip-hop, and apparently today it's Katy Perry. The other day, Justin Timberlake was bringing Sexy back, and that's all right. Right now, we're up and down. All right, Paul, you ready? I'm going to play this this video. I just transferred over for those that are watching. This is from TechCrunch.com. Let me get the music in the background down, and then we'll get this going, and then we'll go full screen with it. All right, without further ado.
There's a whole new world in addition to Bitcoin. I'm here with Vitalik from Ethereum, and I'm Roman Dilek. Can you tell us a bit more about the origin story behind Ethereum?
Sure. So I was working in the Bitcoin and blockchain space for about 2 years before that. So I originally came in through Bitcoin. I first discovered Bitcoin in 2011. Then over time, I started kind of getting more and more into Bitcoin. I co-founded Bitcoin Magazine. And after 2 years, I started getting interested in this concept of blockchain 2.0, this idea of blockchains beyond just currency. And there were people at the time that were starting to realize that you could use blockchains for very many different kinds of applications. And people were starting to create protocols, like next generation blockchains around that. But the problem that I saw with all of them is that they were all still designed around one particular use case. So, for example, someone figures out, you can use Bitcoin to do DNS, and someone creates, or use blockchains to do DNS, and someone creates a blockchain specifically for DNS. Someone figures out you can do a blockchain for financial contracts, people make a blockchain for financial contracts, and so forth. So the idea with Ethereum is that instead of taking that kind of narrow approach, you have a blockchain that has a built-in programming language, and that lets people create any kind of application that they want on top of it. So you can think of it as being kind of like the difference between a Swiss Army knife and a smartphone that has apps on it.
And then there's a currency aspect as well with this blockchain.
Yes, so inside of Ethereum there is a cryptographic token called Ether. And the purpose of Ether is basically in order to pay transaction fees inside of the Ethereum network. So the way that works inside of Ethereum is that in something like Bitcoin, you'd have just a transaction fee, and that gets charged kind of for every kilobyte that the transaction takes up. But in Ethereum, it's a transaction fee per computational step. So you kind of pay for as much of sort of the Ethereum virtual machine as you use.
All right, that's a lot of complicated words you just said, but
Okay.
I get it. It's a complicated thing. So what's the most interesting use cases that you've seen?
There's a few. So there's people that are, using it for things like financial contracts, digital assets, all of the sort of standard stuff. There's people combining Internet of Things and blockchain in interesting ways. So, for example, there's one project called Sztorc, which is doing this idea called smart property, where basically you use the blockchain to keep track of who owns some particular physical object. And this could be something like, a door, a house, a bicycle. And you have this sort of smart lock that listens to the blockchain, figures out who owns it at some particular time, and only opens the lock if it sees a message from the person that owns it at some particular time. So this lets you make something like, just as a very simple example, a bike renting system that's completely automated and runs sort of entirely on the blockchain.
So why do you think we need automated, decentralized systems for all this kind of stuff?
More efficient, cut out the middleman, reduce barriers to entry, make it much easier for people to create these kinds of systems extremely quickly.
Cool. So what's the future?
It's a very long future. I think the concept
It's a whole new world out there?
Yeah, I mean, the concept of blockchain technology is really just starting. It's kind of, if you look at the computing revolution, we had very slow computers, and we had like 5 or 10 applications. The computers became faster, and then other applications became possible, and they became even faster, and so forth. So I think as the underlying blockchain technology continues developing, and as people start coming up with different use cases, and also sort of integrating them into existing systems, I think we're going to see more and more things pop up.
Cool. So the community aspect, of course, is very important, as you know.
It is.
I think you've done a conference recently.
Yes.
How was it?
Yeah, we had a conference last month in London. It was quite interesting. There were about over 300 people showed up. All of the major groups that were developing applications on Ethereum. We had some large companies like Microsoft and Deloitte show up. It was a particularly nice event because it kind of showed, basically this is what the Ethereum community and this is up to right now.
Have you seen good old brick and mortar banks using this kind of new blockchain technologies?
Yeah, actually. There's even a few banks, like there's UBS that has a pilot project that's built on top of Ethereum right now. So it's happening.
Cool. So do you think there are going to be companies built on top of your blockchain in the future?
Quite possibly. I mean,
That's what you hope, I guess.
Some of the companies that are building things on Ethereum are building themselves on top of Ethereum already.
Cool. So at some point you expect to be smaller than the bigger Ethereum companies, or?
Maybe.
Okay. What do you think about the Bitcoin Foundation model versus yours, which is private company?
So Ethereum Foundation is also a non-profit.
Okay.
So it's the one difference that we do have from Bitcoin is probably that we did this crowd sale where we sold the first 60 million units of Ether.
That's what it was.
I mean, I do think it's definitely a much more efficient model, because if we didn't have the crowd sale, then instead of us earning the 30,000 Bitcoin, people would have just spent it on more mining, and we would have probably had just a lot more miners than we needed.
Cool. So maybe a couple of last questions.
Yeah.
What do you think about Bitcoin right now? Where is it going?
Bitcoin, it's definitely a lot of different directions that it can take. On some level, it depends, I guess.
Hold on a second. Hold on. Are you there, Paul? Hey, Paul. Paul. He's lost. One of the things that I just heard him say. Hi, Paul. Paul. What's dead? Can you guys hear me okay in the forum? Hi, Paul. Paul. Okay, there he is.
I
All right.
had it on mute. Okay, yeah, I know. There's so much to say. So I
stopped
think
it.
the Exotica window's a little lagged, so
I
back. Yes.
I stopped it there.
Okay, I'm back.
I stopped it there because he just said that they did a token offering because if they didn't, God, I got to get this right. If they didn't,
they wouldn't have gotten the money.
They wouldn't have gotten the money, and
right.
and then there just would have been all this extra mining. Did you pick up on that?
Yeah, well, I think definitely the two of the most salient differences between Bitcoin and Ethereum, and possibly that we might say are similarities between Ethereum and like a normal corporation, would be the the relevance of the founder, or the kind of the role that the founder plays, which is Satoshi versus Vitalik.
Right.
And he's in that video talking about how he created it. But then this crowd sale is definitely a second one. I don't know which is more important, but I think those are two really big.
Well, so far,
very
those are the
relevant
things that I've picked up on, and that's why I like this video. Is that he really talks about the origin story, and so I'm gonna continue playing the rest of this because when talking about Ethereum itself, what is it? How is it formed? All of these things are nuanced at each level, and who better to tell us than
I agree.
than Vitalik himself.
I'm gonna get better at switching this. I got this mute thing open now, so I'm gonna switch it back because there's a little bit of lag. So I'm gonna I got that perfect now though.
All right,
so we'll switch back.
It's okay. It just makes for good TV. I'm gonna bring Vitalik back on, and he can speak for himself.
What people want to use Bitcoin for, because there's people that want to use it as a store of value, there's people that want to use it as a means of payment. It has different challenges in those different areas. So, for example, price volatility, it's probably a huge issue for people that are trying to just use it to buy and sell things. But if you're just using it as an investment, then it might be something that you want. So,
did he just say if it's something you're wanting to use as an investment, it might be something you want? He just said Ether is something as an investment, didn't he?
Yeah. I see. This is part of what we have to unravel, which is that there's a lot of double talk here, where there's like it's decentralized on one hand and it's a nonprofit, but then on the other hand, there's kind of like this, like reading between the lines of, we're all going to get rich kind of stuff that it's all unspoken, and we're going to have to figure out kind of how we figure that out.
So usually when I go through like deposition audio and transcripts, I look for key little things. And this was another marker where he said, one, we did this token sale to raise money. Otherwise, there would have been too many miners. And two, he said, people can use it as an investment. And people that are using it as an investment, it might be volatile, but they're doing it anyway. And so, going through this is, I think, for those that watch these videos and they don't really think about what they're seeing and in the rubric of analyzing the legal aspects of it, this is maybe you're seeing a little bit of how the sausage is made of somebody who, as you and I are sitting here analyzing these statements.
Yeah.
Things
maybe
like that.
One thing I would point out is that you can create, like Bitcoin has two networks really. One is the one that everyone knows about, and then there's another one that we call the test net. And that one has all this stuff in it so that you can do more experimental stuff in there. And the only real difference between, in my view, the Bitcoin test net, which is a second network that is totally separate from the Bitcoin network, the only difference between that network in principle and Ethereum, between Bitcoin testnet and Ethereum, is that for the Bitcoin testnet, there's no expectation that it will actually have value. So I'm not sure what the legal relevance is, but you can create something. I mean, it seems to me you can create something that is just a toy and that everyone expects is just a toy. But then with Ethereum, it's sort of like Vitalik says it's very experimental on one hand, but on the other hand, there's kind of this like Soviet USSR media thing where, the real story is like being in between the lines.
Let's not go into Putin today, but let's finish watching the rest of this. But we'll mark that down as a key moment in his explanation is that people use Ether as a security. All right, let me bring this back in. Sorry about that. I can't shut that off. I've got attorneys that are sending me emails, and I just... All right,
it depends. We'll probably.
Do you think Bitcoin is going to disappear and there's just going to be Ethereum?
It's extremely hard to say. With any technology, it's it has a very large ecosystem, and generally things that are very large do manage to kind of maneuver themselves into some kind of role no matter what happens. But it's still it's still very early, and like almost everyone in the world, still hasn't even had or used even a single tiny fraction of a Bitcoin yet. So.
All right, thank you very much, Vitalik. That was Ethereum, and there you have it. The future is a whole new world.
Thank you.
The future is a whole new world.
Yeah, that's a funny phrase, right?
It is. Okay, so I'm really not sure how I want to really start with this after having watched this with you. I think what we should do before we dig into this, I know I need a little bit more coffee. I'm sure some viewers want to get set up. We've been going for about 20 minutes. Why don't we get a little bit of refresher? We'll take a break and then we'll jump into. We'll just start with the Howey test. We'll start with Howey, and we'll talk about what that is and actually how that case even became. And then we'll talk about maybe some of the formation of Ethereum and how that did. And yeah, someone says time to open some gin. We'll
All right.
we'll get out and we'll come back. We'll be back in about 5 minutes. I'm going to stop the recording, but I'm going to let the sound roll in the forum so folks can listen into the music. Because that's why they're here. Really, is Rihanna's
The music.
music selection. All right. Well, remember, you're watching the I'm Not Your Lawyer show. This is Jason. We'll be back.